page 46 of 408. The Psychology of Death, Robert Kastenbaum, 2000. Chapter 2. How do we construct death? A developmental approach. Certainly we know death when we see it, and certainly, by definition, our death-recognizing ancestors knew death when they saw it. What we do not know in the least, and what they did not know either, is what death is like, even if it is nothing. How, then, could we or they possibly come to have a concept of it? Maxine Sheets-Johnstone, The Roots of Thinking. Perhaps there exists in speech an essential affinity between death, endless striving, and the self-representation of language. Perhaps the figure of a mirror to infinity erected against the black wall of death is fundamental for any language from the moment it determines to leave a trace of its passage. Michel Foucault, Language, Counter-Memory, Practice. We have seen that psychology was once among the disciplines that considered death to be only of peripheral interest. North American society in general consigned and confined death to the category of special topic. One could and should ignore death except for those occasions when it takes a form too intrusive, too compelling, too immediate. Even then, the rule was to deal with death as quickly as possible and restore the previous order of our lives and illusions. Within this socio-cultural context, it is not surprising that we had little curiosity about the child's curiosity. It would be so much better for us all if children were protected from awareness of mortality. The opening quotations offer a marked contrast to the once prevailing attitude of ignoring death in our scholarly endeavors, public practices, and interpersonal communications. Both Sheets-Johnstone and Foucault argue that awareness of death is at the root of thought and language. There is no way of escaping from this connection, even if we call upon thought and language to conceal death from us. Neither of these authors are psychologists per se, rather, they are philosophers with a broad range of historical, cultural, and scientific knowledge. In this chapter, we start within the framework of developmental psychological and making such explorations into the humanities and other sciences as seem useful. You are dead and I will die, two simple concepts that are very difficult. We begin with two basic concepts that might at first appear simple and self-evident. As we come to appreciate the complexity of these ideas, we will also become more sensitive to the challenges that children must overcome in their efforts to comprehend death. 2.1 You are dead. One of most fundamental distinctions occurs between our conceptions of the death of the other and the death of the self. The first of these constructions can be expressed as you are dead. It is more concrete and therefore more within the young child's grasp to begin with dead rather than death. Hammy the hamster is dead literally makes more sense, especially when one is looking at or touching Hammy, than death has taken our beloved hamster, as it must all mortal beings. There is reason to believe that you are dead develops earlier and more rapidly than the inward-looking, I will die. But the child must know, guess, or imagine several not-so-simple concepts in order to arrive at the conclusion, you are dead? 1. You are absent. But what does it mean to be absent? We must appreciate the observer's frame of reference. For a young child, the frame of reference is largely perceptual. Absence means not here and now. The younger or less developed the child, the more that here and now are condensed into the same global unit. Spatial and temporal dimensions are not yet treated independently. Suppose that you are away, in another city. From an adult frame of reference, you have a spatial existence at the present time, even though you are not within my own personal space. But the child experiences your total absence. You are not in the child's perceptual space at this moment, therefore, you are not. 2. I am abandoned. This statement is the organismic reciprocal of the first proposition. Your disappearance from my perceptual frame of reference has destroyed my sense of security. As the child, I am not merely aware of your absence, but also of the presence of dysphoric feelings within myself. Your absence and my anxiety are intimately related. We see that the child has an organismic, embodied response. There is a cognitive core, but the stress and fear run through and through the child's state of being. 3. Your absence plus my sense of abandonment contributes to the general sense of separation. I have been isolated from the contact and support that I need to feel safe in the world and good about myself. This separation may also lead me to experience a pervasive sense of having lost contact with the environment, not just with you. I am nowhere. I am anxiety. Furthermore, my distress may have been intensified by the feeling that I was forcibly separated from you, wrenched away. This trauma could intensify the already bleak picture of absence and abandonment. Sheets-Johnstone, 1990, maintains that this sense of sundering between the observer and the observed is crucial to forming the concept of death. She focuses on the perception of a dead person or animal, how different it is from the living version. In our view, this sense of alarming separation also has its roots in the infant and young child's awareness that the mother-self bond has been violated. 4. The separation has no limits. Young children do not grasp the concept of futurity nor the general time that flows directionally through all lives everywhere. They live in a world of what might be called local time that is limited to its overall egocentric organization of experience. Therefore, the immediate experience of separation cannot be modulated by future expectations. The infant or young child cannot say to itself, "Mother has gone away. But she will return Wednesday and have a nice present for me." The young child cannot distinguish among short-term, long-term, and final, irreversible separations. Once the separation experience has been induced, the child has no dependable way of estimating eth3/4 anticipating its conclusion. What the outsider may regard as a brief separation may be indistinguishable in the child's mind from the prospect of prolonged separation. Is not here now the same as never again? Even very young children experience the former. It is more difficult to determine just when they start to comprehend the latter. 5. The child's involvement in recurring psychobiological rhythms complicates its relationship to separation and death. You and I have accepted the existence of objective or external time that moves unit by standard unit from the past, through the present, to the future, a clockwork universe that does not much care about our own wishes and priorities. It is different for the child whose time begins afresh each morning when he/she awakens. Midday nap signals a timeout. The child's experience of time is strongly influenced by its internal rhythms of hunger satiation, sleep activation, and so forth, as well as the recurring rhythms of night and day. How does this relationship to time affect the child's construction of death of the other? The vulnerability to separation has already been emphasized. For example, the child cannot distinguish well between the prospects of brief and extended or final separation. Now we must give more attention to an apparent contradiction within the child's experiential world. The sense of limitless separation and the endlessness of any experience conflicts with the recurring rhythms, the periodicity that characterizes infancy and early childhood. As a child who feels abandoned, I have no way of establishing a future limit upon my present experience. The intensity of my distress suggests that I fear that this will go on and on without relief. Nevertheless, and this is the more difficult part to grasp, my psychobiological state is always in transition. I am always becoming hungry or sleepy or curious or something. And the environment in which I am embedded is also in transition. The sun is coming up or it is going down. Various periodic household routines are being started or completed, If the cat has just jumped on the ledge of the living room window, this means that the sound of daddy's or mommy's car will soon be heard. Those rattling sounds in the kitchen suggest that food is again on the way, and so forth. As a cyclical creature in a cyclical environment, I do not maintain a constant frame of reference over a protracted period of clock or calendar time. There are breaks and interruptions in even my most steadfast thought and behavior patterns. In other words, I do not have a continuous experience. Periodic changes in my inner state and in my relationship with the external environment rest, refresh, and distract me. This means that my experiential world is subject to both rules: a. the lack of limits or boundaries within which to place a separation experience, but also, b. the inability to maintain a steady frame of reference over an extended period of time. As a young child, I might misinterpret your temporary departure as being a consequential separation. By this same token, however, I may underestimate a consequential separation, even your death. My cyclical pattern of functioning has led me to anticipate that every end has a fresh beginning, just as every beginning has an end. But there is no end to ends. You have been away a long time now. I measure long time arbitrarily by my own feelings, long enough to make me feel uncomfortable, abandoned. And I have deeply rooted within me the expectation that the familiar pattern of separation-reunion will be repeated. Two opposite responses can testify to the young child's special relationship to time. A. The child may respond in panic or despair over what is objectively a brief and insignificant separation, because to the child this feels like total and unmoderated abandonment. Or, b. The child may respond as though expecting a dead parent, sibling, or animal companion to return any minute now. 6. You do not respond. This applies to the specific situation in which an infant or young child is in close contact with a dead person or animal. It can also involve a dead toy that does not do what it was supposed to do. The most characteristic behavior I have observed in this kind of situation involves the child's attempt to persuade the dead other to respond. Non-responsiveness, of course, remains an important constituent of the death construct for adults as well. This includes death in the literal sense: the eyes did not respond to light, there was no response to pressure or pain stimuli, or to words. It also includes death in the figurative sense: alas, Percy was dead to my pleas. For the young child, it is clear that the concept of non-responsiveness arises from an interactive context. I will make you move. I will make you talk to me. I will make you smile. It is only through the expectation of responsiveness and through failed attempts to elicit responsiveness that the child can generate this facet of the "you are dead" concept. Very early in development, then, an infant or young child will have considerable difficulty in grasping the concept of non-responsivity. Experience with the world as well as maturational changes in the central nervous system will soon teach the child that it is characteristic of living things to respond, and, therefore, a disconfirmation of expectation when they do not. But precisely what and how are children thinking when they puzzle over a non-responsive being or toy? There is an emerging controversy here that we will take up when we review empirical studies on the child's constructions of death. For children as well as adults it is much easier to realize, Wiseman, 1974, death when one has had the evidence of one's own senses to support this conclusion. Again, this is an embodied response, one feels as well as thinks. The need to realize death is perhaps the most frequently cited reason for advocating open caskets at memorial services. There really is a body in that casket, and it is the body of our deceased friend. The young child's direct experience of a dead person or animal will differ appreciably from an adult's, but in either instance this kind of contact does provide a firmer reality base for one's response. A 2-year-old does not think of death the way her parents do, but the encounter with a cold, still, unresponsive form conveys vital, if still mysterious information. Page 53.